Sorry, start again. G'day friends and fans. Welcome to Dave Talks Off Ukraine War Update for the 2nd of February 2026. Another year of war is expected. However, efforts are being made to cut that short. Now, it's not just the United States. Many countries around the world are trying to pressure both Russia and Ukraine, often simultaneously, into ending this war. Now, they want a mutual end. They don't want just Russia to cave into Ukraine and withdraw. They're not idiots. They know but they can't seem to get Ukraine to accept the reality that they can't accept Ukraine can't accept even the most basic reality. They're not winners. And of course, this has Europeans scope and seethe. No, we must be winners. We had to win everything. You know, this whole idea of rigged game. You know, the rules of power. You didn't follow the rules, my friend, so all your arguments are negated. You're not an emotional wreck, so you didn't win the argument. You did not make the women go, ha ha ha, so the ha 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 is a winner. It's like, so we are the French. It's like, yeah, you're the loser. You're the bailed out of the bailed outs. That's Europe, right? They want Uncle Sam to bail them out again. That is the reality, right? And the US taxpayers sick of bailing out these assholes who keep running and hiding behind them and saying, protect us from our consequences. No, bro. You know, you won't learn, right? That's the problem. You won't learn. You have to learn the hard way. Even then, sometimes you don't learn, right? You learn nothing from Napoleon, right? You learn nothing from Robespierre. You learn nothing from socialism, right? You keep thinking, that wasn't real socialism. We'll try again. And you just keep running out other people's money. And now you think, oh, we just print it. Ha 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 ha. Oh, we'll just destroy our manufacturing economy and everybody would just instantly turn into investors and real estate moguls and global citizens and stock market. It's like, it's not how the economy works. You don't have a nation of lawyers and accountants and doctors without the proper education. And even then, life ain't equal, bro. You're always going to have the lower classes born into society. You know, this is what Europe can't handle, right? We're always going to have a three-tier system of agriculture, manufacturing, and services. And frankly, services are overpriced. All of them are. Doctors, lawyers, accountants, they're all overpriced, right? I worked as bookkeeper for 20 years. You pay an accountant hundreds of dollars and then they hire a bunch of nobodies for minimum wage to do the actual work. It's a scam. And it's the scam of expertise. You know, I got the paper. I got my CPA. I can charge you hundreds of dollars for doing basic 1 + 1. Ha ha ha. Now, of course, the world is getting more and more competitive and this Euro trash economy is failing. Now, it's not going to fail overnight. It's going to take a long time to fail. After all, a lot of these nations do have a lot of resources still and a lot of investments, particularly in the United States. And they still have somewhat a functioning economy. It's just the bleeding is still accumulating as debt. It hasn't crashed over from debt to desperation like it has elsewhere, right? Now, Ukraine has an economy 1/20th that of Russia. And they've been stealing from everybody for years. Borrowing money and not repaying it is theft, right? But Russia's finally retaliating, and of course they can't handle it. They can't handle it. Some people are so used to special treatment, so used to exemptions from the rules, that they can't handle the truth. So you have to let them fail, right? It's called tough love, right? You have to let a junkie fail. You have to let them bleed on the streets, and you have to put conditions on their lives and get them to face the truth and admit that they're junkies and that they're controlled by the junk, right? Ukraine are junkies right now, but they won't admit that they're controlled by their narcissism, their entitlement, their decades of being the special jewel in the crown of the Soviet Union. It's all gone, but they just can't handle that, right? They went from being the breadbasket of the Soviet Union now to wanting to be the breadbasket of Europe. But Europe, everybody's in competition to feed Europe for those euros. But Zelensky wants that special sweets deal they gave Italy, Greece and others, where they say, we will take your paper money and turn it into 1-to-1 euros. So suddenly all your millionaires, Zelenskys, with your 350,000 oh, wait a minute, you can't because you're paid in US dollars. Ha ha ha. But basically, oh yes, your 5,600 pieces of Ukrainian pesos, will turn your millions of pesos into millions of euros. And they go, and of course, that's why the European Union is losing value. They keep giving special deals and bailouts to morons instead of letting morons collapse. And the people saying, you know what, maybe we should vote for Californians. I mean socialists. I mean, they're one of the same. But Russia's hit this choke point with a missile. Now, obviously, means something to them, nothing to the rest of us, but these series of locks and artificial lakes and rivers, there's production gathering points. Russia knows Ukraine like the back of its hand. Oh, wait a minute, what's that mole? Yeah, there's going to be a few surprises, but most of the time, Ukraine, it's a fly. Russia's pulling its wings off, and just watching it run around. It's the mouse playing. It's the cat playing with the mouse. Now, this is a heavy attack on Kharkiv and its surrounds, but not as heavy it could be, But we have Russia's making gains here, but still only a little bit of Wojciech, and they've cozied up to Vilcha, gain a little bit of territory, basically forming a front line on a spot on the map. It's really looking like a real another death trap forming. Now they're fighting off Ukrainians here. Russia's in no hurry to go anywhere by the looks of it. Same with Kupiansk. It doesn't like they're really into Kupiansk, just using it as bait while they go after other targets where they've made some progress. Well, there's other areas which they have not, but it depends on your perspective, and from my perspective, I just see another Russian bear trap. Now, that doesn't say every situation is a bear trap. No, Russia has a few areas where the Ukrainians are putting up stiff defense. And remember, Russia's not using the standard military tactics of overwhelming force. They are using the tactics of grind away, grind, wear them down, force them to retreat. And only in some areas, so it's slow progress. They've made some progress in some areas, but in others, not much. And in some areas like Chasiv Yar, once Chasiv Yar fell, the Russians didn't immediately rush into, Konsk. In fact, it's been 9 to 12 months of grind, and they have ground down some area. The final offensive, the final push seems to be building here. Once this falls, it'll be up to here, then it'll be up to here. Once the rest of this falls, it'll just be a straight line through. Probably all of that. We don't know how much of this Russia patrols or has under fire control, because they play their cards straight to their chest and only advance when it's tactically suitable. Remember, they are measuring every supply line to their tactical advantage, right? They do not want to be overstretched, and they want to be able to fall back and immediately enact a bear trap at any counter-offensive. So if a spearhead comes through, they don't crumble, they buckle and expose their second line to immediately just fire over and into the... instead of having retreating Russians in front of them, they basically buckle and just have a clear line to fire into the oncoming Ukrainians, while the side that is buckled just fires over there into the Ukrainians without having to worry that they're going to cross fire, because they're not facing each other, they're facing out in a crosshatch. So facing out, facing out, facing out. It's a three-way front known as the Russian death trap. Now, it seems to be that Russia's forming lines along this rail line to bring up, that would be to bring up artillery on Volodymyr and Donetsk, which means first they're going to take care of this, and probably also they want to cascade down onto here and crush the Ukrainians on their flanks, and that would help in Mozharad. If you've seen previous battles, you know that Ukrainian supply lines are in many places stretched and relying on airdrops, and they are pretty much relying on the fact that Russia's not shooting these craft down because, waste of resources. It's easier to destroy them on the ground. It's, $1 million missile. Yeah, sure, planes, but no, it's, most of the airdrops are, they're saving their resources, right? It's better to shoot combat aircraft and drones than it is to worry about these small supply drones, right? Waste of money, waste of time. Sure, if they put in total effort, they could probably, but then they'd be stretching their budget and face economic collapse, which is why Europe is prolonging the war, to try and force a economic collapse. Now, of course, the Russian bear trap at Bavorsk is continuing, and in some extent, this is what Russia is doing to Europe. A bear trap, hoping that Europe will capitulate to Russia's demands. It's always about maximizing pressure and undermining each other. Everybody's doing everybody. Don't be naive. Don't think that your side is clean, pure, and lily white. Everybody's trying to get their own way all the time, and they're not, and that's why you have the mainstream media there to lash out every day, crying, but Trump, because they are on the side of the liberal establishment, the Eurotrash, and want to paint everybody as a Putin bot who doesn't obey the liberal establishment. Why? Because Russia won't capitulate to the liberal establishment. They are like children. They can't handle nuance. They barely understand the concept of a centrist. So everything to them is binary. You're either with us or against us, George Bush. And they mocked George Bush for that, remember? But of course, he was merely reflecting their own insecurities. Right, so Russia's only making seems to be moves to extend the front line, although they are in Novov, but they're only extending the front line. They're not steamrolling through the town. Obviously, it has to do with not drawing in too many troops and trying to keep the Ukrainians busy as they can elsewhere. Probably why they haven't rushed into here. Plus, they also have to build up their resources and finish off the job in other areas, which would help cut supplies to the Ukrainians here. They are still also clearing fields of Ukrainians in positions of Ukrainian mines and munitions that they've overrun, processing civilians in Hulpol, which they've recently got a little bit left, like the outskirts is still not quite finished, mainly because of the artillery at Zakrin. Pardon me. But if we go around the rest of the map, yeah, lots of attacks, but nothing, a pinprick from Ukraine, which Russia, of course, returns in kind. That's an old one. Now, the weather today, most of the day was below zero, peaking at freezing. So for you Americans, between 32 and 30, perhaps 28. But it's expected to fall rapidly now. Then next week, right? That's the beginning of the big freeze. That is when the 60-ton material tanks, that's the T-90 heavies, come out, because the ground is just compact, frozen. And they're the big boys, big artillery, big guns, and they will pound parts of Ukraine for 4 to 6 weeks. So they're expecting an 8-week window. I would predict 6, but I will see. Don't forget we're only getting in a 14-day forecast. We can actually look at the 14-day forecast briefly. Oh, I loaded you before. Why aren't you just reloading? Because it's probably updated. Of course. Yeah, high and lows. Here we go. Just getting colder. It's going to fluctuate. Yeah. And it fluctuates with the wind. Right. Don't forget so Russia needs, week to get up there, week to deploy. So they've got 4 weeks, maybe 2 to 4 weeks of heavy operations if they decide to go ahead. Now, here's one way to tell if the images, right? Perhaps I shouldn't tell you this, but one of the ways I tell if an image is fake is to look up the weather for the day, right? Remember when Zelensky went for a walk in Kiev and it was supposed to be a bright sunny day? Turns out it was light rain. But you know where it was a bright sunny day? In Warsaw. Ha! And they have a it's called Little Kiev. It's a filming studio for, it's got little sections, where they film movie studios. So, yeah, look up the weather. And you go, wait a minute, all right? They're showing you this apartment building bombed out, yet 3 days ago, right? They're showing you here the same apartment building intact and covered with snow. So, maybe Russia does it too, but predominantly you can see, right, that's New York. You can see, right, weather. Oh, that's the drone where you can see, right, what the weather looks like in the places they're allegedly. See, that's what it looks like when it's on fire, of course. So you ain't going to see a lot of snow, but yeah, you can see current weather. You know, you've got very cold snap in parts, but most of the time, yeah. As soon as there's a fire, there's a big melt. So you just got to look for whether or not. And look at that. Vertical explosion out of the side of a building. That's where's the base to that explosion? It's like, wait a minute. Yeah. Give it. Yeah, look at that. They're always doing it, right? They're always panicking. They're always faking. That, you know, that's what a real street. You know, take pictures yourself. Learn to know what things look like, and you'll start to see when they're faking it, because the perspectives are all wrong. Buildings don't stack up on top of each other, and yet the next day they're all separate. You know, the buildings don't move. Okay, you know, they when they're faking videos, and they're doing it so often now that I don't know if the company's gone live yet, but there's apparently going to be some sort of service to detect AI images. It's like a search on Google, except you find what something really looks like. You know, do an actual image search. I don't know if Google's doing this or not, or who's doing it. Someone said, hey, have you heard of this? And I thought, no. This is, well, if you're debunking stuff, it'll be pretty useful to probably look into. And I go, yeah, I would look into that. And so far I haven't found anything, but yeah, it says it launches. I might have a look at it, but AI to detect AI is an interesting concept. But key events: Ukraine is on fire, although this time it's the Russian side of Kherson on fire after a massive drone attack on a market, which reportedly killed 24 people, including women and children. 5 children in hospital. And the European Commissioner wouldn't even come to visit, before denouncing it as Russian disinformation. How can you denounce something without looking? This is the cowardice of Europe, right? They refuse to believe the Kiev attack, despite the fact that Europe has the tracking information, the radar tracking, the satellite tracking, the pictures of the drones, where they fell, the GPS coordinates, and they've brought this attention to Russian presidential aid to Putin. Has had a phone call with Donald Trump to draw attention to the attack, and without naming names, telling him what the response would be. They have not got a response back from America by the looks of this also. But when asked, Russia says they are revising the settlement. So, yeah. But they have announced the evidence and shown it to the Americans. Now, they also released a video clip of the downed drones, but this was on Russian television. But the West just refuses, although Trump has put out a statement saying he was very angry and has had a phone call with only had a phone call with Putin's aide, not with Putin, but he thinks this is an attack on his efforts to bring about a peaceful resolution. Now, China, India, UAE, Pakistan, Belarus, and many others, all BRICS countries, by the way, have expressed concern and condemned the attack. Now, some neutral countries have condemned the attack. They condemned the attack. They also asked Russia not to attack Zelensky personally. Many times. Every year it's happened. Right? Every year they've begged Putin, don't attack Zelensky. It'll only make him a martyr. I think they're talking about the murder of Barak in Israel, how that turned him into a martyr and changed politics there forever. I think I wouldn't bring up the Japanese Prime Minister. That's a different thing. He was a genuinely good man who was murdered by a fanatic who believed that he was possessed by the demons and had to be excised. You know, that he was betraying Japan. But here we have. This is the result of the fire. That 27, I think, is the update. Two miners were killed. I think 5 in a hospital. 31 total with injuries. The regional governor has spoken to Putin. He was going to address this, but I have not seen anything. But he did talk to Turkey, as well as other countries, including the United States. But Putin himself has not addressed the situation. But a White House spokesman again saying that the high-level meeting will continue negotiations, and Sputnik put out a response saying that meetings are continuing, but who's the real obstacle? And they believe it's Europe. Now, yesterday I said it was Zelensky, and maybe, Zelensky, of course, is just the hand puppet, that, though in part this is a Chinese military blogger's speculation in an interview with Sputnik that Brussels has its own agenda, blah, blah, blah. Now, stress that Russia values Trump's political will. I mean, you have to understand, right? Russia knows America holds the ace, right? That when it comes to investment, development, market, global influence, right? Russia's BRICS is only is a fragile economy, and that it represents a blip on the map now to the US. And sure, China hadn't succeeded and was genuinely the number 2 economy and not just the number 2 on the world, that Russia would easily steamroll Ukraine, get its way, but it hasn't. Same with India, right? India is a stain on the map of the world as well. Its influence, its reach, it's already in decline before it even reached its peak. That they still rely on foreign railway, they still rely on foreign shipping, they still rely on a lot of foreign technology. They're just very good at rebranding and claiming credit. But their biggest problem is, they're being shown for fools many times, revealing many cracks in India, such as the fact that a quarter of its armed forces isn't armed, that a quarter of its armed forces has outdated equipment, that don't know how to deal with China, so they're trying strategic counterants to try and stop the Chinese incursion, because they don't yet understand that just like many nations in the world, right? China is just a scorpion who uses every opportunity to backstab you, to get ahead. And of course, India, of course, is a scorpion and doesn't understand how to deal with itself, let alone, all the internal problems of India, right? Growing feminism, a growing push to replace Modi with, I forget her name, some women's rights activist is gaining power and momentum in India, but so are many others. And it would be surprising if she goes the way of many other activists as well. And what do I mean by that? Well, activists in India tend to have accidents. It's a very dangerous country, But just ask, who's the number one brown glazer in India? Helen Mirren. Just ask her about her glorious trips to India. Oh, India, such wonderful people. Oh, I love Indians. Oh, I love my Indian guru. Oh, my brown man, big brown man. I'm going to marry an Indian man. Now look where she is, right? Single, alone in England, shivering under her bed. Her six, what happened to this glorious hotel in India you're going to build? What about this cultural bridge you're going to build and all that, These people just can't admit they make mistakes, whether it's India or China. And to some extent, Russia has pride too. I'm not, but I think when it comes to pride, I think Zelensky definitely has way more pride than Putin. Putin's at least a little bit more willing to negotiate, and he's got a lot of cards to play with. And Ukraine should have come to a deal long ago. They could have cut themselves in. But they always want more, you know what I mean? They always think, well, we have to have the high ground. We have to have the advantage. You had the advantage and you burnt all goodwill in 2022. You had the advantage. You could have ended the war there. And in fact, had you ended the war and got the Minsk Accords, you could have leveraged the Russian withdrawal over time. But because they spent all their goodwill and unwillingness to give guarantees to the Russians, give security guarantees to the Russian people there, cut them in on the mineral deal. No, he just wants everything for himself, right? It's a typical hook nose in money mafia, right? It's my way or my way. There's no negotiating. It's deal of a lifetime. This stupid, moronic mentality of Zelensky. And yes, he will eventually slip and fall. And I'm telling you, it's going to be the Ukrainians who do it. It is not going to be it's going to be set up as a Russian, but it's going to be either Ivanov or who's the other one? There's Valeri or the maybe on an outside chance it's the leader of the opposition. But no, I think it's going to be one of maybe even Kaminsky is going to get rid of him. I doubt it. Kaminsky has too much to lose. He needs a political man. He needs the fall guy. But of course, if things get too bad and Kaminsky has to run back to Switzerland, he might this time take care of Zelensky. But it's more going to be it's either going to be the radical communists or the radical far right who are going to kill Zelensky and blame it on the Russians or each other, or both. It's not a matter of speculation. It's a matter of high probability that Zelensky is on borrowed time, and simply the only thing keeping him alive is the fact that British intelligence hates losing, right? But they're not the world's biggest sore losers. Otherwise, America would have never won the Civil War. It would have been, they would have steamrolled. They would have fought France and broke the blockade and blockaded the Americans into submission, bombing Boston Harbor. You name it. Sore losers. You haven't seen anything yet, but I am hoping that Russia does not invoke the sore loser protocol of the Orsk solution, or worse. And there is always a but worse option, isn't there? I mean, just think, had things not gone Churchill's way, we would have seen massive clouds of chlorine and mustard gas across most of Europe. You have no idea how close the world came to a catastrophic situation in Europe. But it almost was, and it's the same with everything. We people forget that there are but worse problems, and people are sitting on, and America too has said we're sitting on more weapons than you realise. And of course, I'm not naive. I think when it comes to America and Russia, that America could suddenly put 10,000 tanks within a year into Europe, and Russia would have no choice. But I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Trump wants to basically destroy the world in order to win, whereas Russia is hoping that they could just squeeze a little bit more out of the situation. Now, we don't know exactly how far they will squeeze or what the red lines are, but if I was to speculate on a red line before I go, is that you don't go past these, right? You might get some Mykolaiv or that, and Kharkiv, maybe a bit of Sumy, but I think once they start pressing, that's why they haven't pressed down into here or in here, why they haven't pressed 10 armies. It's 5 now, but there was 6. They're reorganising 6 into 5. They're relying more on the border patrol, which is technically not the army, and technically not the army. Border patrol has North Koreans in it. So yeah, you have 3 predominant armies and 2 standing armies, literally standing, and you have the border patrol, right? And you have the volunteer army, which is providing security and logistics for the Russians, which is a huge advantage for, again, which enables them to keep reserves of nearly 2 million. Now, whereas Ukraine started off with 800,000, whittled down to 670,000. They're trying to get another 120,000 out of foreign Ukrainians, and it isn't working. So my guess is that the red line might be, you can hit a few places, you can show off now and again, but you go past Mykolaiv and Kremensk and Kharkiv, you're going to suddenly find yourself facing not 31 Abrams, but 3,000 Abrams, and that would be catastrophic. Or the 101st down in Romania will suddenly park in Odessa and start forming a lot. Yeah, we'll see when what happens. But I don't think Putin will break that line to see what happens. I don't think he's going to call Trump's bluff. I think he's going to just try and get the Larry, Curly and Moe, that is Keir Starmer, Merkel 2.0 and Macron, to cry, to bring themselves to the brink of disaster, and then go crying to Uncle Trump, who will smack them around a little bit and then put a diplomatic statement about unity and solutions, and you'll have Mark Rutte, who'll come out with a speech announcing that NATO accepts Ukraine's neutrality on certain conditions, and Russia won't withdraw, but it has to give guarantees, and they're working on the language of their capitulation to make it sound like they're not capitulating to Russia. because their base will blow their collective minds. Shame. They, of course, want war, a war they won't fight, because I think a lot of people in Europe right now would want to see the left go to war and, say, face the consequences of their actions. But no, you don't really. No. You want the left to fail politically, not militarily. Thank you all for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. Please support the channel. You can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. Now, all my links are in the link tree, description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. Yes, I'm Australian. Thank you for noticing. See you in the next video, and bye for now.